Call to order the Plan Commission meeting on June 21st at 6:30. If you remember the public that wants to speak, if there do have half-sheet forms in the back, if you want to speak on an item, you can fill that out and hand it to one of the individuals on the end. When we get to your item, I will call you up here. The public does have 3 minutes to speak, and so I'll let you know when that is up. Otherwise, we can go ahead and get right to it. First up is approval of minutes from May 17th.
So moved.
Moved by Randy.
Second.
Seconded by Emily. Any changes at all? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, those are approved. I do not have, that I'm aware of, any public appearances for non-agenda items. I believe everyone is here to speak on something on the agenda. And agenda review, anything that we need to change at all?
Not on my end.
All right, sounds good. Let's get right to it. All right, first up is public hearing on TID 14, which is a public hearing regarding the proposed project plan, boundaries, and creation of tax incremental district number 14. And we have Greg from Ellers here. I don't know if you want to say anything to kick it off, Deanna, or you want to turn it right over to Greg?
I will just go ahead and turn it right over to Greg.
All right. Go ahead, Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I'm going to share my screen and just bring up a presentation here. Good evening. The presentation I'm about to go through is really just a summary of the project plan for TID District number 14 that was included in your packets. There's no new information that's in this presentation. It's just intended to hit some of the high points of the information that was included in the project plan. I'll start by just explaining the timeline and the process for creating a new TIF district. We have the dates and kind of the boards that meet highlighted here. The first step in creating a TIF district is a convening of the Joint Review Board. That consists of 5 members from each of the taxing jurisdictions, the city, county, school district, in this case it's Oregon School District, and the technical college, and then the 5th member is a public member. That first meeting is an organizational meeting that was held earlier this afternoon. No action is taken at that particular meeting, but they were given the same presentation I'm giving here this evening. The next step is where we're at this point, which is the required public hearing before the Plan Commission. There's a resolution on your agenda to consider creating tax incremental district number 14. If the Plan Commission chooses to approve that resolution, this will go to the Common Council, which is scheduled for July 26th. If it's approved at the Common Council level, this will go back to the Joint Review Board. They have the final approval that would occur on August 10th if the other approvals are received. So this is kind of an overview of the process and where we are at presently. I want to begin by just giving a quick overview and recap of how tax incremental finance districts work. We have this graph that kind of depicts how a TIF district functions. So I'll kind of give a quick recap and overview. When a TIF district is created, it consists of whole and contiguous parcels. There's a defined boundary for the TIF district. And at the time the district is created, all of the parcels within that TIF district have a current assessed value. The cumulative total of the current value of all the properties in the TIF district at the time it's created is called the base value. The city, county, school district, technical college will all continue to receive their proportional share of taxes collected on that base value, just like they do presently. So there's no change in terms of the current value and how that tax revenue is distributed. The financial benefit of a TIF district occurs when there's an increase in that value above what was there at the time the district was created. So typically that happens from construction of new development. It can also occur just from appreciation of property value within the district as well. So as that value increases above the base value at the time of district creation, that's called the incremental value. And all of the tax revenue that's generated on that incremental value is retained by the city to pay for eligible project expenses within the district. So the city retains its share, the county, school district, and technical college's share to pay for those eligible expenses within the district. So a TIF district at its essence is a partnership between the city and the other taxing jurisdictions to help promote growth or redevelopment within a particular area to increase the tax base. When the TIF district reaches the end of its maximum life or it generates sufficient revenue to pay all of its costs off early, the district closes and all of the tax increment value returns to the tax rolls, and all the taxing jurisdictions collect their proportional share. So that's really the long-term objective, is to increase the value within the area. So when the district closes, there was more value there prior to the creation of the TIF district. I'll start by going through some of the statutory findings that are required to create a new TIF district. I'm going to start with what's called the 12% equalized value test. So this is a test that is specified in the TIF statutes. And it states that if you take the current incremental value of all of the city's active tax incremental finance districts, and you add the base value of the proposed district you're creating, that cumulative total cannot exceed 12% of the city's total equalized value. So on this chart, we list the current incremental value of all the active TIF districts. It's worth noting that the city recently terminated or closed tax incremental district number 6. That got the city back under this 12% threshold. So when we look at, the existing incremental value plus the estimated base value of this district, which is about $4 million, that combined total is less than 12% of the city's total equalized value. So the timing of this test is somewhat important this time of year as well. If this TIF district is ultimately created, goes through all those steps I highlighted at the beginning, the creation date will be the date that the Common Council acts on creating the TIF district. Even though that's not the final step in the process, that's what the Department of Revenue determines is the creation date. And so the 12% test is applied based off of the equalized values that are available at the time the Common Council acts on the project plan. Because on August 15th of each year, new equalized values for all communities of Wisconsin are certified by the Department of Revenue. But we can base the finding now on the values as of January 1 of 2021. So we're in compliance with that 12% limitation. Now I want to speak to some of the particulars regarding tax incremental district number 14. We've kind of summarized the purpose, the goal, and included the general map that was identified in the project plan. This consists of several parcels that are kind of south of Haight Farm Road, kind of west of Highway 14, kind of in this area depicted on the map. This is, again, located in the Oregon School District. The primary purpose of this district is to pay for public infrastructure improvements, streets, utilities, necessary to allow this area to continue to develop. There's also an allowance for development incentives that the city can choose to offer to help facilitate development. That's subject to approval by the Common Council of a development agreement, but it's all that infrastructure is needed to help encourage additional commercial and residential development within the boundaries of the district. So that's really the goal, is to kind of help further those particular types of land uses. This TIF district is a mixed-use TIF district, so that means it has a maximum life of 20 years, and one of the statutory requirements of creating a mixed-use TIF district is that you need to be able to demonstrate that at least 50% of the gross area of the district is suitable for some combination of commercial, industrial, and residential development. You need 2 out of those 3 land uses to qualify as a mixed-use district. So in this district, there's some existing industrial development, and then the new developments anticipated to be commercial and residential. So more than 50% of the area is suitable for a combination of those 3 land uses. There is a restriction on the amount of newly platted residential development that you can have in a mixed-use TIF district, and that cannot exceed 35% of the gross area of the district. So while there is a residential component anticipated within this TIF district, it does not exceed that 35% threshold. So in terms of the statutory requirements to create a mixed-use TIF district, all of those land use tests and classifications are satisfied. So in terms of the preliminary projects, we'll go through the specific list in a moment, but generally speaking, the plan identifies that the city could finance public infrastructure costs directly, offer development incentives to developers to reimburse them for the infrastructure costs that they've incurred, or some public infrastructure costs could be paid by the developer outright. So the plan gives the city flexibility to kind of use whichever financial approach is appropriate for the particular development proposal as it comes forward. There's also an allowance for development incentives that the city can offer, if appropriate, for development within the district as well. Again, that requires a development agreement to be approved by the Common Council. And typically, the city's best practice is that it requires developers to go through what we call a pro forma review to demonstrate their financial gap on a particular project, help quantify the need for financial assistance. So all of that analysis occurs before a development incentive is awarded. In terms of some of these specific costs that have been identified in the project plan, if I get my screen to play nice, there we go. So we've included the chart that's in the project plan, identifies specific improvements within the district. So there's some interceptor sewer, some road improvements, and some other utility improvements within the district. Then there's also the allowances for the development incentives that I mentioned, and then also ongoing administrative, legal, and planning costs that will be incurred over the maximum 20-year life of the district. So the total project costs identified are approximately $34 million. So by approving a project plan, really what that does is that just identifies what projects are TID eligible and can be repaid from tax increment if it's sufficient within this district. By approving the project plan, the city is not committing to undertake any of these expenditures that are identified in the plan. That will require separate approval by the Common Council and kind of follow normal approvals for capital investment and approval of development agreements for any incentives. So just by approving a TID district and creating a TID district, you're not obligating the city to incur any of these costs. That will all go through separate approvals as development proposals materialize. We've also included the map that was identified in the project plan. Each of the projects that were enumerated in the project list had a letter assigned to kind of identify where they are located. So this map that was also in the project plan just identifies where some of the utility and anticipated road improvements are located in relationship to the proposed TID boundary. In terms of the anticipated land use within the district, there's been some preliminary site plans presented to the city. That's depicted here on this chart. This was also in the project plan. You'll see there's the existing industrial uses to the southern portion of the district boundary. Then in the northwestern corner, there's some proposed residential. And then the balance of the site is really broadly kind of general commercial uses within the district. So again, it's kind of all three land uses that are permitted within a mixed-use district: industrial, residential, and commercial. And that residential component is less than 35% of the total gross acreage that is identified in this project plan. So this is just kind of a general potential conceptual layout for the proposed development within the district. Part of what we wanted to illustrate is really how the potential full build-out of the area within the TIF district could materialize. So this is an illustration that kind of projects out how certain lots and areas within the district, based on that site plan map, could develop. Will likely unfold probably different than it's modeled here, but this is really kind of an illustration to kind of show that full build-out really over a 10-year period. The build-out could occur quicker, could occur slower. This is just kind of to illustrate that potential for development within the district. So within that total area, if that full build-out is achieved based on the values that we're projecting, by within 10 years, about 183 million of incremental value could be generated. So again, just an illustration to kind of show future build-out of how that could occur within the district. If that 182 million of value is generated over the 20-year life of the district, that's estimated to generate 59 million in tax revenue. So again, as we talked about how a TIF district works, the city would retain all of the tax revenue generated from that new value and use it to pay for the project costs identified in the project plan. So over 20 years, that could be as much as $59 million. So finally, we just kind of did a cash flow analysis. This was also included in the project plan. This is also an illustration of how, project costs could be incurred over the life of the district. This kind of shows a mix of the financing approaches that I had identified, potential city financing for some costs, what are called MROs or municipal revenue obligations. Those are kind of the legal term for development incentives that can be provided to developers to reimburse them for costs if the increment is sufficient to do so. So again, this kind of illustrates potential phasing of project costs and kind of that full build-out scenario of the TIF district. Really, when you look at the city's practice over the years with its TIF districts, the city has been very diligent and deliberate by, matching the pace of investment in TIF districts to match the timing of development. And that's really ultimately the key to financial success of a TIF district, is to incur those costs, when you have some reasonable assurances that the incremental value will be sufficient to cover them. If you invest a lot of money in a TIF district on the front end, if that development lags or gets delayed, the city has to cover those costs in the interim period until the increment value is sufficient to cover it. So it's important to kind of match that pace of investment with the pace of development within the district. So again, this is really just an illustration of how those costs could be incurred and phased in over time over the life of the district. So to summarize, again, the purpose of this particular district is really to help facilitate some new commercial and residential development within the boundaries of the district. The eligible project costs that have been identified in the plan consist of core infrastructure, streets and utilities, also allowances for development incentives. And again, all those project costs would have to go through separate approvals by the city. The plan gives the city financial flexibility to use a variety of the financing methods we discussed, versus the city financing some improvements or requiring the developer to finance them and get reimbursed, or combinations of both. Which approach you use will, be evaluated as development proposals come forth. But the district provides kind of a revenue stream to partner with the other taxing jurisdictions to help pay for the cost of the infrastructure that's really necessary for this area to be developed, and provides an alternative revenue stream other than the city, funding those improvements as part of its regular capital improvement plan. So again, the items that are on your agenda was the project plan is the official document that's required to be prepared under the TID statutes, and then there's a resolution approving the TIF district that you can act on if that is your preference. So with that, I'll pause, see if anyone else from city staff has anything they want to add further, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Would you like to add anything, Dina?
Yeah, I just want to say a few words. The Plan Commission in April approved the Hartung Comprehensive Development Plan, and so that is the same area that we're looking at with the tax increment district. And I just wanted to point that out, that some of the maps that were shown in the previous presentation might have looked familiar. This evening, the Plan Commission is considering Plan Commission Resolution, or PCR 0122. And what that means is designating the proposed boundaries and approving a project plan for the tax incremental district number 14 in the city of Fitchburg. So.
All right. With that, I can open the public hearing. I do not have anyone from the public registered to speak on this item. There are for other items, but not on this item. So in seeing nothing from the public, I can close the public hearing, but then open it up to discussion on the resolution R13322. If anyone, and we do have Jonathan Stevens here from Sarah Investment, who's available to answer questions as well, if we have any questions. So any comments, questions from the Planning Commission? Emily.
I had a question about the project list. Can that be added to or subtracted from, or is that kind of a document that is like set, and after it's set, it cannot be altered?
No, you can go through what are called project plan amendments over the life of the TIF district. There's no limit to the number of project plan amendments that you can undertake. So typically you undertake those when you want to usually increase the project costs that are identified in the plan. While we've listed some specific, those specific projects in the plan, the narrative in the project plan also states that the city has the ability to reallocate those dollars to other TID eligible expenses identified in statute. So you have some flexibility without amending the plan, but if the district goes very well or you need to undertake some additional costs, you just amend the district. You do have to go through this exact same process to amend a district. You can also amend the boundaries of a TID district, but there's a limit. There's 4 boundary amendments allowed per TIF district.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments at all? I know that I'm excited about this and about the opportunities for additional businesses to potentially come here to Fitchburg or to expand here in Fitchburg. I know Mike Zimmerman, our economic development director, has talked about there are businesses that are interested in moving to the area, possibly coming to Fitchburg, and they send out this request for what land you have available that's ready for development. And there's been some that we kind of had to say, we really don't have anything right now, and having this available would actually overcome that and provide more opportunities for us to continue expanding and growing our business space here in Fitchburg. So I'm very excited about that.
I had one more question, and this is more for city staff. Just as a point of information, how does it get decided, like which development areas are potential TID districts?
We work closely with economic development, and we work closely with the finance committee and the mayor and the city administrator, and take kind of a holistic approach and see what kinds of opportunities are out there. And not every place and not every development is going to be good for a TID. And so I think Mike can always say he's always looking for opportunities, and this one fits the standards of what we would look for. Does that kind of help?
All right. Anything else? Seeing nothing, does someone want to do an amendment on Resolution B?
I will. I'll stop. You're looking for a motion to approve, correct?
Correct.
I heard you say amendment. Motion to approve consideration of Resolution R-133-22, Plan Commission Resolution PCR-01-22.
Second.
Sent by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that's approved. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Mayor.
Have a safe drive back to Milwaukee.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, next up is public hearing ordinance 22022-0-22 and Planning Commission Resolution PCR 0222. And first, we will have David come up and speak to why he would like this amendment, and then we'll have staff report, and we'll have the public speak at that point in time. So, David Wood, if you kind of come up and give us an overview on why you would like this amendment to the comprehensive plan.
Good evening. Do I have time limit or not?
No,
Okay. Well,
not as the applicant.
real quick history. I'm Dave Wood. We live right around the corner as you continue on East Clayton around the corner along the bike trail. We're at the corner of the old Earl Culp farm. Some of you may know that from back in the day. And we built this crazy barn for special events and stuff, and maybe Fitchburg could come by and have an event one of these days. But at any rate, over the years, I got to know Mr. Clayton, and he's a devout Packer fan, and so I used to meet with him during the Packer games, and we'd compare notes, and I'd bring a couple of beers. We'd talk about how much we hate, and we got to know each other. And he taught me about the property, and he said, you seem like a great guy. If you ever want to buy it, if the family's not interested, we'll get you a shot at it. So that's kind of how it evolved over time. And kind of a altruistic thinking is I would want to have something in terms of a say to what goes on the property, which is one of the motivations for buying it. So it brings us to today where now with talking with the city staff and Tracy, the water and sewer is going to be there now, so now it's in a position where we can do something with it as it kind of showcases that corner of coming into Fitchburg. And of course, Terra Vesta is filling up rapidly. And then there's a concept across the street called the Royal Capital's product now. I think that's still moving forward as I understand it. So I met with staff a couple of times. They taught me how to go through the process because I don't do this every day. But the concept is to take the southern portion, which we call the mountain, which is a crazy hill. But the beautiful thing about the hill is when you get standing on the top, you can see the wind powered system over at Springfield Corner, so the views are crazy good. So the thinking is to do something in a high density residential there. The concept I have, having worked for Stark Company Realtors for 10 years, being a corporate marketing guy, looking at trends, and having gone to Applewood Self-Storage over the years, there's a market for people that want to still enjoy Madison, but they've left. They're from here, they've gone to school here, they live somewhere else, but they want to have a nice kind of high-quality place, luxury place, carefree lifestyle. They're done with having condo association dues. They're done with putting their hands in the dirt. They've done all of that, and they're happy with the concept of the cost of freedom being a rent check and a renter's insurance, and they want to have a nice place to stay. And the location is great, all the amenities, the bike trails. So we've talked to staff about looking at the site to develop a high-density residential up on what I call the hill, which is the south portion. And as we looked with engineering on to develop the site, because of the great slope down, we're going to look now to probably break it in, I'm going to call it in half, plus or minus, and bring in a new CSM for you guys with some plans for some high-density, high-quality residential, and then working with staff to look at what we can do to market the south end, which Mayor's helped me with, but wants to move it from original mixed-use consideration for now to a business use to see how the product is accepted. So that's kind of where we are in a nutshell. And so I'm asking so I can continue to move forward, market the product. I've been taught from staff that we need to do the comp plan amendment that staff has supported to make those zoning designations applicable so we can start to do the next thing of doing a CSM, working on how to deal with that elevation and put in a design plan to bring back to staff. Questions?
All right. First, we're going to have staff report.
I'm going to begin with just an overview of what we're doing this evening. We have 2 minor comp plan amendments on our agenda this evening. So I thought I'd start off with just a little bit of an overview what that means. The land use in the city's comprehensive plan is just that. It is a future land use map. It is not zoning. What the future land use map does is guide our zoning and our development. So what we're looking at this evening is an amendment to the future land use map in the comprehensive plan. The city may do 2 calls and requests for minor comp plan amendments a year, and that generally happens in the spring and the fall. This is our time for reviewing, considering a minor comp plan amendment in the spring. So what's before the Plan Commission tonight is this proposal, which you can see up on the screen. And Clayton Road is right along here, and then Highway MM. And part of Mr. Wood's property the future land use map would shift in the first place from mixed use to high density residential under this proposed minor comp plan amendment. In addition, the current future land use map shows that Clayton Road would be relocated to the south to create a T intersection with County Highway MM. So there's 2 pieces of this proposed minor comp plan amendment to change the future land use designation from mixed use to high density residential just in this area, and then to remove that future right-of-way for Clayton, and that would mean that Clayton Road would continue to exist in the future in its current right-of-way. So I think I'll just leave it kind of, that's a pretty good overview for there. And then just for Plan Commission, tonight, what we're looking for you to make a motion or consider actions in two pieces. The first one is on PCR 0222, which is the Plan Commission Resolution 0222. And that's something that just states that you support the change in the future land use map. And then number two, we're asking you to take action on a recommendation to City Council on an ordinance supporting this minor comp plan amendment. So I'm going to step back and open up for any questions.
Yeah, first we'll do the public hearing. We got a number of people here, both in the chambers here and I believe online as well, that wish to speak. I'll start with the people here in the room. And first I have Ross Jackson. If you'd like to come up to Mike on either side and speak, that'd be great.
Good afternoon. I live in that neighborhood, and just in the last week, when this came to my attention, I was looking. I've noticed that just across the west of the County M Highway, they rezoned or repurposed what was initially as a business district or zone to a mixed use. To me, that seems to go in well with the transition onto the east side of MM with the mixed use that's already noted for future use. So the transitional going from that into what seems to be one of the few remnant forest areas that Fitchburg still has in that area is more complementary as it is now. I noticed, and as far as mixed use and residential, looking at the previous reclassification, a mention of 1,100 dwelling units previewed for the northeast neighborhood with possibility of maximum of, well, not maximum, but up to, I think, 1,700 or so. No time frame was given for that type of growth. I don't know if that's on trend. It's kind of hard to determine what the growth rate for residential living units in Fitchburg is. My just general perception of how much apartment buildings are going up, it seems to be on track, if not exceeding. So in summary, my initial view of this doesn't seem to be a need to have a high-density residential in that part of the Northeast District.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, next I have Jay Allen. And then Brian will be after that.
Hi, I'm Jay Allen, 5170 East Sherrill Parkway. I am a member of the City Council, and this proposed change is in my district. I just wanted to point out a few things that I think are important. This is about a 10-acre parcel, and given the topography and the other issues that are involved here, I think the ultimate correct zoning for this when we get there, it's not what we're doing tonight, but the correct zoning for this is going to be as a PDD. I don't think using just high-density residential or low-density residential or something like that is appropriate for this site. So if the Plan Commission is inclined to approve an amendment to the comp plan tonight, my recommendation, my suggestion would be that you take the entire 10-acre parcel, which would include the business section that's just to the north of there, and make it all be mixed use, because that's what we would need to go with PDD zoning in this location. And under PDD zoning, if you want to build high-density residential, you can. It's been done in other areas in the city. If you want to build a restaurant, you can. It's been done in other areas in the city. Hatchery Hill, where the grocery store is, Pick and Save up the hill there, that's all PDD. And PDD just gives us a lot more flexibility to do different things as the situation arises as we move forward. So if the Plan Commission is inclined to approve this, that's what I would ask you to do. The question then is whether the Plan Commission is going to be inclined to approve this tonight. And I'm not sure that's going to be the right choice, because you have a number of speakers who are going to tell you that the developer hasn't even done the bare minimal outreach to this neighborhood that you would expect someone would do, knowing that there's a public hearing coming up. There's been no contact with any of the neighbors. I've received a bunch of phone calls in the last week from people who are just astounded between the phone calls and the emails that this is going through with no communication from the developer whatsoever. And that's not normally the way we do things in Fitchburg. We normally expect developers to go and have a neighborhood meeting or two to try to get neighborhood buy-in before they come in with proposals like this. So I think that approving any change at this point is a bit premature, and that the Plan Commission should either consider denying this and starting this process over and having it done the right way, or at bare minimum delaying it for a while. But like I said, if the Plan Commission does choose to approve it, make the whole thing mixed use so that we can have the flexibility to control a little bit better how things happen on that parcel. Thanks.
Thank you. Brian Stam.
Thank you so much, Plan Commission and Mr. Mayor, for having me here tonight. My name is Brian Stam. I am a resident of 4871 East Clayton Road. I've been there for just under 6 years. As you can see from the neighborhood, it's not a very large neighborhood. It's a small neighborhood. It does back up to a forest. I believe there's only 14 single-family houses on that road. I would bet with a fair amount of money that there are more deer that live in that forest than there are people that live on that land. So to say that I was a bit shocked to get this letter of this meeting notice tonight, saying that there was a possibility that there was going to be a large development just on the other end of the East Clayton Road and bordering my property, was a bit much. So I'm here today to discuss with you a little bit about what I'm hoping that the Plan Commission would take in consideration prior to making any sort of decision on this matter. As my job, I work for the state of Wisconsin's Department of Employee Trust Funds. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Strategic Health Policy. One thing that I know how to do is make long-term plans. And one thing that we always do in my office is gather stakeholder feedback prior to making any sort of plan or even going forward with any sort of plan. And unfortunately, that is exactly what's been missing so far. There's been no outreach to myself as the owner of one of the pieces of property that borders this land, the mountain as described earlier, and very little, if no, outreach to any of the other neighbors that I have talked to on this matter in the past week. It's a bit concerning, especially considering we are a neighborhood. You know, we like to talk to each other. We had a barbecue just past week, and it's a bit disheartening to hear that one of our neighbors decided not to even discuss this with us prior to this meeting. With that, unfortunately, there's been a lack of communication on what the plan actually is. I've heard anything anywhere between 2 to 8 buildings that would be put up, anywhere between 80 to 300 units. Unfortunately, rumors are flying because there is no plan at this point, at least nothing on paper. So what I'm asking before the Plan Commissioner to make any sort of decision on this is that an actual plan is developed. And then by the plan, I'm talking about full architectural drawings, wastewater management, traffic impact, environmental impact. The area that he's planning on putting that is in a forest right now. There would be a fair amount of trees that have to come down. And once again, I said that there's a fair amount of wildlife there, and there's some. So with that, I would hope that not only that plan would be developed and submitted to this organization, your committee, for review, but also with the neighborhood. it's important to get feedback from the neighborhood prior to going forward with any plan. That's what I have to say. Thank you so much for the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. That is all I have in the chambers here. If someone else is in the chambers, no, not right now. That hasn't spoken in the public. We do have some people online, though. No, we don't have people on. Oh, not for this one. Oh, I thought we did. I think we do. I don't know if David Bing is on, Emily Verba, or Ben Green. I believe all of those are supposed to be for C. All right. Oh,
Yes.
sorry. We're on C now. All right. Who would you like to go first, Scott?
Dr. Verba, one of you needs to turn off your microphones because you're going to feed back to no end. But one of you gets to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Dr. Ben Green. I'm married to Dr. Verba. We're at 4877 East Clayton Road. We've been here about 30 years. I just have to echo everything I've heard so far from folks, our neighbors and our alderperson. I have a great concern about the safety that would be put at risk, I think, by all the traffic congestion that would I think would be inevitably the result of a high-density residential complex at that location. I also have a concern about the fact that the Oregon School District had recently brought some land in very close proximity to the proposed development to establish an environmental learning center there for kids to be able to walk through the forest and learn about nature. I think that would be tremendously compromised by both a high density residential area and whatever the several businesses proposed would be. I'm going to leave it there because I know other folks, including my wife, will have more concerns to make. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And should we have his wife? All right. Dr.
I can jump in.
Oh, we're getting some echo. I don't know if maybe your husband, between the two of you, I don't know who needs to shut it off a microphone or something like that. Sorry.
Yeah, I can. Just gonna.
You can, yeah, you can go on his. That's no problem.
Okay, that works much better.
Perfect. All right.
Here. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Plan Commission. To echo the theme, we were quite shocked to receive the notice in the mail last week. We had heard nothing about it prior to that time. I am not in favor of this proposed change and high density apartment buildings there. My reasons include that I feel that such development would be completely inconsistent with the character and the context of the existing neighborhood. We are blessed to live in an area that has an established environmental corridor with the bike trail and the Nine Springs E-Way. That would be compromised. The proposed development is inconsistent with the future land use map. And it's simply not consistent with the surrounding area to put that high of a density development in that particular spot. In addition, I have strong questions about the proposal to not create a T intersection on County MM. The city's own Public Works Department feels that this would improve safety. And I can see no reason or have heard no justification other than perhaps convenience as to why the safety should be compromised. So echoing what other neighbors have said, I would strongly ask that the commission defer any kind of action on this, certainly not pass it. and let us all put our heads together and see what might make better sense in order to preserve the integrity of this neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We also, I believe, have David Bing on for this one. Go ahead, David, if you want to turn, there you go.
Yeah, thank you for letting me. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Brian and Emily are both neighbors of ours, and we've been here my father bought this property in 65 and knew Jim Clayton then, and I grew up in this area knowing the Clayton family as well. And I don't know how many Packer games Dave went to with him, but I grew up playing football in the front yard of the motel, and this whole area has been a neighborhood developed by, in a sense, by Jim Clayton's Nine Springs Motel, and I think going forward, we're missing the boat on pushing this through so rapidly when there's been no conversation except for this meeting. Again, Dave Wood has not reached out to any of us, echoing what everybody else has said as well. So, it's the Woods is here. This home to many different species, wildlife, deer, cranes, fox, owls, turkeys. And I think it would be just a disaster to this beautiful ecosystem here for all the animals and wildlife that we already see every day. So both my wife and I are opposed to this proposed amendment at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I believe that is everyone we have for this item from the public. So I will close the public hearing part, but now open it up to questions, comments from Plan Commission. Mike Z, I don't want me to put you on the spot, but you've been here a while and you've been through these a lot. Can you just speak to the process a little bit, traditionally, kind of how it's done? Because I think there's some question to that, maybe, if you don't mind. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I know there's some questions about that, and there's talk about wanting full development plans, but it's too early for that step. And if you could just speak to that quick for us.
Sure. I think people kind of approach us about concepts and ideas as far as what's identified in the future land use, and then we work with them as staff to kind of field ideas about them wanting to maybe look at some changes to the future land use, plan process. And it's kind of conceptual and hypothetical, at this point in time before there's actual full-blown plans, that are developed to move something, forward. Normally, they would approach us and then it goes to the elected officials because it takes, either the mayor or 3 alders, to propose the minor comp plan amendments as part of that process. Then there's a public hearing notice that we have tonight. But normally, too, though, the applicant sometimes will do that neighborhood outreach in advance of that, at least kind of talking to the adjoining and adjacent neighbors, just to kind of share some thoughts and ideas of what they might be considering, for their property. I don't know, does that answer your question, or is there something more specific?
No, I think that's helpful.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
But it's, like I said, we fielded these types of requests through the years where it's more at the 30,000-foot level as far as what the future land use would be changed to. The details would come later, that I know the one gentleman, asked about some specific plans. That traditionally has usually come later in the process because the developer, the applicant probably isn't going to go forward and spend that kind of money to develop that level of detailed plans unless they know that there's support for that future land use designation that they would go and develop those plans for.
That's when we would require the outreach and neighborhood meetings and things like that, correct?
For the specific
Not that people
details.
don't do it at this step, and it's smart to talk to your neighbors as soon as possible, but there's a requirement at that point.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, planning commissioners, and I can speak maybe to, why I wanted it to be high density on one half and commercial on the other, because it's mixed use right now. So really, as is, you could put apartments on it. That's something, right, that I think is important for people to know here, is that as is, there could be apartments on there. And I didn't want the whole thing to be mixed use, because to me, when I hear that, that means you could put 100 square feet on this for, I don't know, a coffee shop or yoga studio or insurance, something like that. But then the entire, 7 or 10 acres, whatever it is, could be apartments. And to me, that's scary, because that could be 400 plus apartments on 10 acres very easily. And so that's why I wanted some high density on one and commercial on the other, because then I feel like that limits at least a little bit how many apartments might go on the combined the combined frontage. So that's where, I kind of went this way, because when I hear mixed use, I hear a little bit of mixed use, but mostly apartments. And that's what I've seen, at least in Fitchburg. So that's just kind of my history and what concerns me a little bit. So that's kind of my thinking on why I did that, but open, and I'd love to hear what other people on Planning Commission think. Randy, I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, Mike Zimmerman, thank you for your answer to the mayor's question. I think that gives a good overview of the process, and I think that's so important, because I have developers approach me all the time, and of course they want to talk about high density. And I voted for many projects with high density. It all depends upon the area and how much thought has gone into that process and those projects. This one, I just at face value, I'm a little skeptical. But again, as you pointed out, Mike, this is at a very high level. And once we get past this, into the details, and as a member of council, I'm going to look at all of those specifics. And that outreach is extremely important. At least from my perspective. And I always encourage the developers who have approached me, make sure you reach out to the residents of Fitchburg. And some of them do, some of them don't, and some of them get turned off right away on that. Because some of them feel that we should be doing the outreach, we as council members. I think with that said, though, I hear what everybody is saying, but I think we can at least move forward at this point. At least that's my thought. And then with the process in play, that's will give us the opportunity to move the project forward or to defer it, even for a longer period of time. So that's where I'm at.
It looked like in the packet that Public Works did have a chance to look at the intersection. And I'm very familiar with that intersection, and right now it feels a bit unsafe. But can you elaborate more on what their concerns were, if any, or if they felt that it would be fine, as is, especially if there's increased traffic?
So there has been informal discussions with Public Works, and specifically to this question of whether or not they would be okay with changing that future land use map to put the roadway back into the existing right-of-way. And they didn't voice any significant concerns. They felt that that there was ways to address traffic concerns within the existing right-of-way.
Other questions, comments, Stephen?
Yeah, so the question then, I must have read the packet wrong. So the plan is that right now in the future land use, it shows that East Clayton will be redirected to the south, and that this amendment would bring it back to its existing condition? It would not?
Yeah, you are correct.
Okay.
The existing future land use map, it's a little bit hard to see up here, but the existing future land use map is actually what's shown here with the future Clayton right-of-way that cuts right through Mr. Wood's property, and then mixed use on the higher level to the south, and then commercial on the lower level. This is the existing future land use map. The proposed amendment would change this area to high-density residential and then remove this section of East Clayton Road.
Well, with that, I would say I'm a pretty firm no, because again, familiar with that intersection, I think that to me kind of is a wrong decision and should require further looking at. I would also echo what Randy had mentioned is, these are very high level plans. They are, not necessarily tied to a specific project, but typically when we do future land use updates through comp plan amendments, they are at least earmarked or designed for a specific purpose. And while this could be developed today as a mixed use, this doesn't feel like a straight away that we need this done because we've got this development coming in. Like, those are traditionally how these have been handled before, where they might be pretty high level plans, but they've been much more vetted and further along, where the amendment really made sense because having been through that process, I'm especially particular to making changes to the comp plan, unless it is absolutely necessary because of the work that goes into that every 10 years. So, but more so, I think for me, it's the road that's the right thing to do, in my opinion, and moving it or keeping it where it is for, at least another 10, 20 years doesn't make sense to me.
Randy?
For this particular project, is it necessary to move the road? I mean, that road right away, and keep it where it's at now?
I don't know if I could speak directly to that project, if it's necessary to move it.
David, if you'd like to come up maybe and answer that question.
Thanks again for the opportunity. The road was something that I think was back in 2008 or so. There was some interest to change the geography for environmental concerns, and I worked with Mr. Zimmerman on this plan to have a different road, so at least it would equate the space to be utilized, because the first plan that was dropped in just didn't make any geographical sense. Working with Paul Woodard, and the first time I met with Mr. Zimmerman, he had notes that indicated the staff in the city had agreed that that change was not really appropriate, and that the road should go back to East Clayton. And in working with Deanna, she said, why don't you go ahead and let you fix that now through the amendment, versus us going back to Mr. Woodard's staff notes and so on, which had already moved back to East Clayton. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg. The road sat there because that was the map, that's how it was built, and it was never changed in bringing the road back to East Clayton. But all the city staff notes that Mike had brought to our initial meeting talked about that road being moved back to where it is at East Clayton. It just never got done. And Deanna said, go ahead and appeal with that, deal with that now in the comp plan amendment versus us doing internally with staff. So that's the history on that. While I'm here at the 30,000-foot level, I did not know at the 30,000-foot level. I had to talk to all the neighbors. I did talk to two most contiguous folks twice. So it's not like I deaf-eared it. But my understanding was to get the comp plan changed so we can start looking at evolving and bringing a plan with the level of detail that Mr. Randy talked about doing, so you can vet it and look at it. We've kind of echoed that conversation through all of this, that once we get to a point we can start working on a plan, that's when we can bring some shape to it to look at. That's my intention. That was my goal.
Thank you. Deanna, I do have one question. So we have another amendment after this. Would you say that the two amendments are similar in terms of the level of detail that they have of the idea? Because I know that's one of Stephen's questions is, talking about there should be more detail, there should be more of an idea of what they're having. Do you think that the one after this is similar to this, or is it actually a lot more, maybe less?
They're very similar. Staff has seen some rough sketches about what is proposed. We've worked through, for example, we have worked through with Mr. Wood that the things that he wants to do. So we've talked about commercial, we've talked about the apartments, and so that's we're at a very high level, as Mike was saying, at the 30,000. And the second minor comp plan amendment is at a similar detail at this particular point.
Thank you.
I have a question, Aaron.
Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
If we don't move the road as the only outlet from this lot onto then it doesn't look like it really touches Clayton in its existing form.
I believe, Deanna, that there would be entrance and exit on both East Clayton and on or is that maybe the southern lot is just on MM? So the idea is to have two lots. The southern lot, high-density residential, will that have access to East Clayton and or only MM?
Yeah, the idea, well, we haven't worked out, what the actual plat would look like and what the parcels, but the idea would be that at least in our initial discussions, that both the lots would have access to East Clayton and to MM.
Okay. All right. Zach, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. I'm struggling with this one right now as well. So I guess I don't really necessarily understand the benefit of moving it to high density either. So I wish I had more details, more information.
Sure. Stephen?
I guess my question is there anything that prevents, because these aren't wildly different future land uses, where sometimes we've gone from one extreme to low density to industrial or something like that. Is there anything that prevents, with this being mixed use, for the plans to continue to maturation? Because what I'm hearing of what the plan is, it's high density residential, but to your point, if we added in, I can't imagine because that's my plan. Exactly what you're talking about is I want to move away from here and not winter in Wisconsin, but when the kids are grown, I don't want to have a house. I don't want to have a condo. I love the idea. I would love to have shopping on the first floor of my building. So is there anything that precludes that kind of planning to proceed forward? And even if we were or were not in a future, in the fall, perhaps, to take a look at this again, it doesn't feel like we're saying that there's no way that this plan could go forward. He could definitely do what at a 30,000-foot view would fit within mixed use, right?
So the mixed use future land use designation is quite specific, and it does mean mixed use in the sense that within that parcel there would be both residential and commercial. Generally, under our comprehensive plan, as you noted, it would be commercial on the bottom and residential on the top. If Plan Commission so chose, it would not have to be layering mixed use, but it could be a mixed use just within the parcel of commercial building and residential building. In our discussions with Mr. Wood, he indicated that he did not wish to incorporate the commercial development in that way that would meet the requirements of the definition of mixed use. So that is what brought us to the high-density residential in that spot.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the other question then is that we're talking about a 7-acre parcel. Is the idea that can I just ask, is the idea that you would have the high-density residential over that whole 7-acre parcel, or is that a portion and then some would be remaining for wildlife or for other uses? If you can just answer that, I guess.
Come on. Yeah, come on.
As we looked at the parcel in the development and the potential costs, we looked at there's really two pieces. And in working with staff, we had the south high hill for capturing the views and so on for a residential component, and the southern view towards the intersection to be more business entities. So I'm looking at the thing as eventually being two different types of programs. And we want to try to preserve the nature and so on. We want to have access to bike trail. I appreciate all of that. The neighbors probably also know me as the crazy guy who's planted 22,000 trees around the corner, DNR stewardship over the state of Wisconsin. So I know the value of wildlife because I've been living and breathing it since 1995. But we're looking at the pieces as really kind of two entities, I think, because it doesn't make sense to do the whole thing in apartments. And we've been real honest back and forth about the meetings, and that's why we changed that to a business use on the north end to allow for the opportunity for other things besides just all apartments. Does that answer your question, Mr. Heller?
Well, so the lot that is under so the south part of it, which would be the one that is actually changing.
Up on the hill, the south hill, yeah.
That is 7 acres alone, right?
How many?
That is 7?
No, we aren't sure. That that whole parcel is 10. There's two lots with an aggregate of 10, and we're not sure until we get the, kind of that, again, I apologize, kind of the chicken egg. We get the comp plan amendment changed so we can start working on ferreting out plans. And as Mr. Zimmerman said, at 30,000 feet, you got to start some places versus spending a whole bunch of time and effort that's misguided. And so, again, when we get to that point, as we've all talked, whatever we come up with once we get through this leg in the journey is that everybody's going to have a chance to vet what we're doing from a staff standpoint, from a neighborhood standpoint. And my understanding, I've been taught, because I don't do this every day, that's when that dedicated public outreach and city staff discussions go on when you bring in plans. This is at that very high level to try to be able to get zoning comp plan changes so we can start to go that next step. That's what I'm here for today.
So for the rest of the Plan Commission, the reason I'm asking is because the other thing that I would absolutely hate to see is that we say, okay, let's take this 6, 7 acres or so, make it into high density, and the plan is to build on 2 or 3 of those acres, because how many apartments would we really want in that area? And then we're going to come back and say, now we want to subdivide this and then, do something else with it. That's where I was going with that question, is to that's a large enough parcel that makes me wonder whether you're going to actually develop the entire parcel, or in the future we're going to now be breaking off and saying, okay, we do actually want commercial here. Great. Could have been mixed use the whole time. That was where I was going with that.
One of the things that Deanna and I talked about in the meetings is, again, not knowing how the elevation is going to fare it out, and working with city staff to have the driveway for the South Hill to tie in with what's going on with the major intersection driveway to the west at the Royal Capitol. We would plan to tie in that, so we're not creating another safety hazard, another intersection. Once we get this amendment, hopefully where I can get it, then we can look at elevation studies and decide, is it going to be 2/3, 1/3, back to your point? I don't know. And until I dig in and get my hands dirty, I don't know. I'm just not there yet. Make sense?
Other questions or comments? Mike?
I just wanted to provide a clarification on the road there. And my notes, I did have notes in there that David had met with city staff, but it was at his request for that road relocation consideration. And then we had a staff meeting with Public Works and with Planning, and it was agreed to, and that's what my notes referenced, was that after he made the request, met with the city staff team, that we had agreed that there would be a future, when there would be a future minor comp plan amendment, that it would be for that relocation of the road, but it was at his request, so I just wanted to kind of add that.
And to clarify for confusion, it's relocating the road back to being on East Clayton Road, the existing road.
Just keeping it as is.
Yep.
Okay. So Deanna, I want to run down what I think are the options for us tonight. One, we can essentially approve and send this to council as presented. We could deny and recommend deny to the council.
Mm-hmm.
Is it an option to postpone a month? Or maybe you don't recommend that. Well, you can speak to that.
So you are correct. The commission could vote for approval. They could recommend denial. They could recommend some revisions, or we could also just postpone for another month.
Well, I suppose we could change it to low-density residential
Yes,
or
it
industrial, or
And
we could do that.
Commission could amend also. And I'll just, the Plan Commission actually needs to take 2 actions. The first one is on the Plan Commission resolution, and then also just to make a recommendation to council on the ordinance. I would expect your votes would be the same. Your decisions would be the same on the 2, but just to follow our practice, we'll have to have 2 actions by the Plan Commission.
Okay, yeah, maybe in the future we'll just make those 2 agenda items so to make it easier for people to see that.
Sure.
That'd be great, no problem. All right, thoughts on anything else? Someone want to do a motion of some kind? Randy?
I motion to postpone for a month the Plan Commission Resolution PCR-02-22 and Ordinance 2022-0-20.
Let's do them separately.
You want to do them separately?
We'll do them separately,
Look,
yeah.
didn't give me a
No,
separation there.
we'll do them separate.
All right.
Is there, so that's a motion.
I'll second.
Seconded by Stephen. All right, any further comment that you have at all? Okay.
No further comment.
All right, any else want to speak to the postponement? All right, seeing none, then all in favor of postponing, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that one is postponed for a month, and would you like to?
Sure, I'll
do a
finish
motion
it.
second by?
And then I'll motion to postpone ordinance 2022-0-22.
Second.
Seconded by Stephen. All in favor of postponing the second half, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, so we will bring that back in a month. All right, moving along to D, public hearing and an ordinance and resolution for another comp plan amendment along Haight Farm Road. Do we have anyone here from Avante? I don't have anyone on my list for D. I don't think anyone's here from Avante.
Haven't heard anything.
All right, so I guess we don't have anyone here from the applicant. Would you like to give a staff report then?
I certainly would. So this is our second request for minor comp plan amendment. This is a site that is actually just across the street from the Hartong site and tax increment district number 14, which has already been on your agenda this.
Actually, this was part of TID 14.
Oh, yes. Sorry, you're right. You are right. It is part of TID 14. Currently, the site is currently on the future land use map is low density residential, and staff notes for the Plan Commission that the zoning here already on this parcel is Smart Code New Community. So when the Nine Springs neighborhood was developed and zoned, this site was included in that overall planning. And the low density future land use map just kind of seemed kind of hanging out there. So what is proposed, the request is to amend the future land use map, and it's approximately a 1.7 acres just north of Haight Farm Road from a low-density residential land use to a mixed-use designation. And that mixed-use designation would be similar to what is in Nine Springs to the north, to kind of match what's already there. The applicant has presented some general discussions, just kind of for your information, no specific plans of doing mixed use that might include some office kind of flex space and then townhomes for the site. So let me just see. I'll leave it there.
All right. Then I will open up the public hearing. I do not have anyone that I believe wants to speak from the public on this. So seeing no comment, I will close the public hearing, open up to questions and comments from Plan Commission. Emily?
I was reading in the packet that a portion of the site is shown as environmental, and that would also be changed to mixed use. Can you just elaborate the rationale behind that?
This is kind of a fuzzy designation. So on the future land use map, those are drawn kind of at a very high level. And what we let me step back. I'm getting myself all mixed up. We would be proposing the mixed use for the parcel with the idea that any sort of environmental resources there, it's not a designated environmental corridor with CARP-C, is what I'm trying to say. In our future land use map, the lines between low-density residential and the environmental, they're not drawn real accurate at this particular scale. So we would be changing this area to mixed use with also the recommendation by the Tree Advisory Committee that any high-quality vegetation or trees would be protected. I guess I neglected to note that too. The Tree Advisory Committee took a look at this particular proposal and requested that the applicant and future developer would do a tree inventory and then protect any high-quality trees and plant additional trees if necessary. So hopefully that.
But we can't require them to keep trees. We're asking them to keep trees, correct?
Yes.
Work around anything
Yes.
that's there.
Yeah. We don't have requirements, but we're here to work with the development community.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, sounds like we have to do two motions on this one as well. Someone would like to do a motion?
I will move to approve Plan Commission Resolution PCR-03-22.
Second.
Presented by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay? All right, that one's approved. Next one, Stephen.
And I move to approve the recommendation to Common Council with Ordinance 2022-0-23.
Second.
Presented by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved as well. All right, moving along to E, conditional use request by Matt Graham, and we have him, I believe, online. Matt, would you like to tell us what you're doing here?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm Matt Graham with Gastinger Walker Architects in Kansas City, and we work with Surge Center Development as our client. And so they're looking at taking about 7,500 square feet in this building you see here at 5400 King James Way. And just, I guess, just a little background on the surgery center. So this use is more or less an office use that would use, typical business office hours from, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., 5 days a week. This center will be elective surgeries. There's no emergency services provided whatsoever. And so they would build out the space you see there on your screen. And, no changes to the existing parking. Seems to be adequate for our use. The few things we will need to do is add a, generator, chiller, some equipment to serve the surgery center, but I think that's part of the next ADR request that we'll have to submit. So really tonight we're just requesting that we can allow this use at this address. And typically we go in office buildings like this all the time. This seems to fit our needs very well. And, for that, I can open it up to questions or.
Well, first we'll do a
listen to the
staff
staff report.
Yeah, we'll do a staff report first.
Okay.
Okay, so the existing zoning on this particular site is business general, and this type of medical use requires a conditional use. As the applicant noted, they are renovating a portion of the existing building, and this is not a facility for overnight stays. There are 3 other tenants in the building, and as the applicant noted, the next step would be to submit for architectural design review to address some of the outside additional renovations. The proposed use is consistent with the overall intent of the city's planning documents, and the staff recommends approval with 11 of the 11 conditions. And what the conditions are speaking to are the number of patients, the hours of operation, no overnight stay. I note that the architectural design review will need approval, and I think I will open it up.
All right, thank you. I will open the public hearing. I know I have Amy Bauman and Mallory Rakoski also registered to speak. Are you with Matt, or do you want to speak individually at this point?
Yeah, so Amy and I actually represent the landlord, so we're just hopping on here in case there's any questions about the building or anything specific.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that people get a chance to speak if they need to. All right, I do not see anyone else then from the public that wants to speak, so I can close the public hearing, but open it up to comments or questions from Planning Commission. I think, Matt, just the one question I have, just for my own, I guess, knowledge, is this something like a knee replacement, cosmetic surgery, hair replacement, probably not appendicitis.
Yeah, sure, yeah. It varies from site to site, but typically this client would deal with, like orthopedic type sports injuries. And they kind of vary by complexity, but typically, I guess I could just use an example that, most patients walk in to the center and get their surgeries, and then most of them are able to walk out that day later, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, it varies kind of across the board.
Okay, great. Other questions, Stephen?
Just a question on the staff recommendation, the condition number 2. Just curious if the 8 beds, typically that's used for an inpatient setting. Did you guys kind of agree that together? I just want to make sure you're talking 2 ORs and 8 recovery bays. Does that?
This is kind of what we came together with the applicant.
Okay.
That we didn't limit them, but we wanted to be very clear as staff of what the facility was going to be used for and the intensity of the use. So staff wasn't limiting that, but we wanted to specify what the intensity of the use was.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I would say as long as the applicant agrees to it. It just was as I'm reading it, I'm like, this isn't 8 beds because it's not overnight. So.
Okay. Emily.
Well, that's how many recovery beds we have in the facility.
Great. Emily.
So understanding that, most patients walk in, walk out, heaven forbid, something does happen, someone needs to be rushed to the hospital. Has the parking lot and been looked at by the emergency services just to make sure an ambulance can easily get in, get out, and there's no issues there?
I think that would probably be part of condition 10, I would guess, which is the fire department requirements and review and ensuring that essentially the public safety components are taken care of in case something like that's needed. And that was partly done when the building was designed too, just because every building, someone could have a medical emergency, not just a surgery center.
Right, but still.
I think you raised a good point too. We'll definitely keep that in mind as we move into the architectural design review.
Great. Anything else? Or a motion? Randy, go for it.
Motion to approve conditional use request CU-2452-22 Surgery Center at 5400 King James Way with the 11 staff recommendations.
Second.
Submitted by, I think I heard Zach, second one. I'll give that to him. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay? All right, that is approved. E, oh no, that was E, sorry. F, the final plat request for Thermo Fisher. I believe Brian is online for this one. Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. Appreciate you guys taking the time. I know that we looked at the preliminary plat last month. Nothing has changed on the final plat. I do have Chris Wild here online as I guess for the owner, if there are any questions directed to him, but also just for the support of this as well. We just had a couple concerns and potentially questions. I don't know if that wants to or go with the staff recommendation or after, but ultimately this was the final plat for the sell-off of Lot 1 parcel, which runs to McKee Road. I guess I'll open it to any questions, or if I can ask questions now, if that's the appropriate time.
I think we'll do a staff report real quick, and I don't think there's anyone from the public here to speak, and then we can go to that.
So this is the third step in the platting process. Plan Commission has reviewed the comprehensive development plan this year, and then secondly, Plan Commission reviewed the preliminary plat, and now we're at the final plat stage. Thermo Fisher is proceeding through this process in order to create a 7-acre parcel at the northeast corner of McKee and Spoke Drive. And at this point, they have not indicated who is the buyer. On May 10th, at the Common Council meeting, Alder Gerhardt noted that the site is currently wooded with mature trees. She requested that the preliminary plat be referred to Tree Advisory Committee. And then at Common Council meeting on June 14th, last week, Alder Gerhardt also referred the final plat to the Tree Advisory Committee. The Tree Advisory Committee met last Thursday on June 16th and approved a resolution in reference to this site. And specifically, the resolution requested that the applicant create a tree survey of the wooded properties at the corner of McKee and Spoke, and suggested that the applicant work with the city forester to identify trees that are valuable, that could be saved, mitigate any tree loss, and help to move the city in its direction of a goal of 30% tree canopy cover. So staff has recommends approval of the preliminary plat with a total of 16 of conditions, and one of those conditions do suggest that the applicant in future permit requests, such as an architectural design review, would work with the Tree Advisory Committee and the forester to address their concerns to protect valuable tree cover.
All right. 1 second.
Yep.
First, I need to, okay, I do not have any public comment on this one. So, yeah, Brian, did you have some questions then?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. I guess some of these comments I think are small and easy for us to address as far as number 7 and 8 for right-of-way needs that can be labeled on the plat. We are currently working right now with number 4 to get concurrence from the utilities. And that's kind of a process. So we are working on it, and that will be provided. I think number 5, we can easily note that restriction, but I think that is something that would be potentially for the future buyer, knowing that if they're going to change any of the elevations, that it ultimately is done with engineering plans and has to be brought before the board. for approval. I think the big concerns that we have, and Mr. Zimmerman, if he's still at the meeting, might be able to shed a little bit of light on it, because I've talked with Jason Letha in our office, who's been working with Thermo Fisher for years now, is that I think on the comprehensive plan years ago, the Discovery Drive path that Thermo Fisher has installed that is on their property was potentially looking to be a right-of-way public road through there. And I think with my conversations with Jason, that it had come to the board or the city potentially to be a public street. And I think the city had turned it down at the time. So our concerns right now are with with number 2 and number 3 of providing potentially the easements and or including having a developer's agreement to install a water main loop back into their system. I have talked with Chris Wild, who is on the line and can shed a little bit more light if he needs to. I think Thermo Fisher is in agreement to provide an easement if desired, but as far as trying to loop the water main and have further expenses, knowing that there's ultimately nothing being built on lot 2 right now, and the water main loop would not serve lot 1. We were confused as to why that recommendation was put in there by staff. So I don't know if there's somebody could shed a little bit more light onto that. It was not brought up with the preliminary plan or the preliminary plat. And we're just trying to see if the city is ultimately requiring or requesting this construction to take place prior to the signature of the final plat.
We have Mike Z here. Could you speak to that, Mike?
I can just at least shed some light on the Discovery Drive there and it being a private road. Back when we were working on Spoke and Sprocket and kind of with the Arrowhead plan there, we had actually wanted Discovery Drive to be a public road. But at that time, Thermo Fisher had requested that they wanted it to be a private road because they didn't want a lot of public traffic cutting through their campus and the buildings there. So that's why it ultimately ended up being a private road. That was at their request at that point in time when we were working on the Spoke and Sprocket project. So just that information.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So conditions number 2 and 3 are conditions that Public Works are requiring. As they've gone a little bit deeper into the review, it didn't rise to the surface on the preliminary plat, but this was something that Public Works specifically requested as a condition on the final plat.
Dan, is that something where as the plans kind of developed and go forward, if Public Works at some point in the future decides, you know what, actually, sorry, we actually don't need this, is that something that can be changed later and brought back and say, hey, actually, sorry, this isn't necessary based on what we know now and as development happens?
So as when Plan Commission approves with conditions, then that means these conditions have to be met prior to the city signing the final plat. So I think one way we could approach this this evening is we could postpone and allow staff and the applicant to work further through items number 2 and 3. Or Plan Commission could make an amendment to the conditions to say that items 2 and 3 will be determined through working with the staff. So I think you can probably do it either way.
Okay.
If you want to approve it tonight, amend the conditions on 2 and 3 to say that those will have to be finalized by city staff.
All right. Brian, do you have a preference if we postpone it a month to let you kind of clarify those items with staff versus, I guess, having it be conditional on it coming to agreement with staff tonight?
Well, I guess let me ask this question to the Plan Commission as well. If approval potentially could come with an amendment to the condition, would there be a possibility, looking at that plat, that if Thermo Fisher was ever to build a building on Lot 2, which is just a green space now, it was a fill site in 2017, that at that time we can have an agreement or get an agreement in place that we or Thermo Fisher can install a water main and easement as requested? I'm just having a hard time seeing the need for it with the sale of Lot 1, as they're not really intuitive or going to help Lot 1. So I guess that would be my other question.
I guess as a plan commission, we wouldn't do that. That'd be something that staff would have to come forward with those recommendations. But it seems like your preference would be if we approve it with changing those conditions to, an agreement with city staff or
Finalized by city staff, that items 2 and 3 would be finalized by city staff. And just to clarify, at a final plat stage, this is one of the most easiest ways to legalize and put in place easements, as you know, Brian. And so staff wants to make sure we're looking long-term. I'm not going to speak for Public Works, but plats, final plats are a long-term document and an important land use tool for the city. And so that's why Public Works is taking a close look at that. And I think that a reasonable approach would be for Plan Commission to approve with an amendment to items 2 and 3, that those issues would be worked out with city staff.
If I may, Chris, I see that you're on the line. Do you have any questions or comments with that if we postpone to try and work through city staff on this, or do you have any thoughts?
Well, we wouldn't postpone it. We'd approve it with the condition that you work with staff to finalize that. And postponing isn't an option, but we could approve it tonight with that.
Well, if that's what we can get as an approval with the conditions to work with staff, I think we would be more than willing to do that. We're trying to understand the need for it for the requests.
Sure. Chris, did you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, my preference would be to approve it tonight, and we'll work with city staff, going forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dean, I had another question on something that you mentioned, because it's not laid out like this in the staff recommendation, but you mentioned that this requirement that the tree advisory wants that any trees taken down, they have to essentially get okay from the tree advisory committee and the city forester, because to me, if that's in here, it should get removed. We have not made that requirement of anyone else ever. To me, yes, if there are some nice trees in there, I would love it if whoever it is that owns it tries to preserve those, but that's not a requirement we can make of anyone else. And you talk about equity and fairness. I'm not going to start doing this for every tree on every lot that someone wants to develop. That's not right or fair either. So I don't know.
Well, I don't think that the intention of the tree advisory committee was to, we certainly don't have any requirements, but I think the intention, and perhaps I miswrote this, but the intention was to encourage a dialogue between the tree advisory committee and the developer to see if there's some places that we could have a meeting ground to protect our existing tree canopy. But there certainly is no requirements for a one-to-one or anything like that.
Okay. Other questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll take a crack at it. I'll move to approve final plat request FP 2454-22 with 16 conditions as noted by staff, with an amendment to conditions number 2 and 3, that those are, help me out here, to be worked out with city staff.
Perfect.
Second.
Seconded by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed, nay. All right, that is approved.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next up is a pre-application for Avalon Lot 3, and I believe we had Ned Hoyt online for this one. Go ahead, Ned.
Good morning. Good morning. How are we all?
It's not morning here. It is in Australia. It's not here.
I am here in Australia. My wife has double knee replacements tomorrow, so thanks for humoring me with the Zoom presentation and the morning comments. We have been in discussion with Phil Clemens, the owner of Avalon Lot 3, which is just northeast of our Ochala Drive project, which is under construction sort of at the moment. After discussions with the staff in Vienna, we're advised basically that we should bring it forward to the Plan Commission for a pre-application hearing to understand whether the Plan Commission would consent to a further PDD application on this site. This existing site, if I remember correctly, was approved under a PDD in 2007 that included both it and the parcel to the west that has the Avalon Assisted Living, and then has been further developed in the interim with the UW Credit Union on the further west. So it was already kind of a PDD zoning. The existing approval PDD for this particular Lot 3 site had essentially a residential, high-density residential component that we are looking to be consistent with, although it was originally intended to be kind of aged care, elder care housing versus just general market rate housing. I'm going to take us to the next slide. So again, from a rationale, from a plan development sort of perspective, as we had some earlier conversation today, the plan development district essentially allows for a variety of usage and adjustment of the zoning ordinances to fit the particular use. Because this property was already set up as PDD, it seems natural to use it again in terms of moving forward. But it certainly allows us to meet the kinds of density and setback and level of development requirements that have been required and consistent with the North Fish Hatchery visioning that the city has been promoting, and we've been trying to work with them on over the last several years in several projects. Next slide. Our expectation is that we're sort of proposing something that is in the range of about 170 residential units, should have a construction cost and on completion value somewhere in the range of $30 million, which with assessed value would lead to a significant increase in the tax base for the city within this TID district and corridor. As well as by utilizing a undeveloped site at the moment within the urban corridor, reduce the need for kind of development and further sprawl in other parts of the city's area. Next page. And again, we believe we're consistent sort of with the comprehensive plan and the visioning. We would obviously provide a more thorough and complete package when we actually would apply for a GIP or SIP approval for this site. But essentially, again, at this time in asking for permission to apply for PDD zoning, we do believe that we are consistent sort of with the goals of the comprehensive plan and the North Fish Hatchery visioning. Next page. And I can give you a general sort of idea, but it might be sort of useful to sort of go on, Deanna, to the actual diagrams, which kind of show a little bit about how it would play out. So this site plan here kind of shows the Lot 3 location in relation to the existing kind of Avalon development. You will notice that this particular version is very similar to what we did at Terrace Point, in the sense that it is a square rectangular structure with a green roof. That project where we had the grand opening with the city for the Fish Hatchery Road, I think has been very well received by the public and by the city. So we're looking to do something very sort of similar here. On the north side of the property, there is a existing access easement that was approved as part of the original PDD process, and provides an access easement to Index Road for the Middle Avalon properties. We can go to some Q&A on that sort of later if desired, but we intend to maintain that access, which will provide a kind of a back way into the assisted living facility, as well as kind of access for us out in the event of an emergency. But most of our kind of users and tenants we expect would go on to Index Road, but we're maintaining those accesses. There's some other utility easements sort of in that area. So basically we propose to nestle the building between that access easement and the south boundary. At this stage, we have not yet done the detailed architecturals. There certainly has been a little bit of initial feedback from city staff to provide a bit of articulation and variation and better addressing of Index Road, and we would certainly intend to do that as part of any GIP process. But again, seeking the Plan Commission's approval to proceed with PDD zoning application prior to going to all those efforts from an architectural perspective. Next page. So again, in one of our typical sort of net and Mike and venture capital buildings, we have a very efficient underground or covered parking kind of arrangement. We have some number of tandems that we generally line up with our 2-bedroom or larger units. And the fact that we have parking underneath the green roof allows us to hit a much higher kind of level of parking for the area of business or the area building sort of coverage. In this particular early iteration, we're at roughly 189 spaces with 170-ish apartments above, and combined with the external parking, it puts us at a 1:3 something ratio of parking, which is consistent with our Terrace Point apartments that again was approved by the city and constructed finishing in 2001 and is operating sort of at the moment. Next page. And again, our typical sort of format would be to have kind of a roof deck with fitness, club room, other amenities opening up onto it, patio space essentially for those sort of units, decks on the outside, but it provides a significant level of amenity for the residents and green space to them in addition to the residential sort of units. So that's the highlight of what we're looking to propose under sort of PDD. But this application in particular is to request permission in order to progress sort of down that path. And we would obviously provide a level of additional kind of detail at the time of submitting the initial GIP application for the site if we're allowed to proceed.
All right, it's Deanna, do you have a staff report?
I'll just have a few comments. Of course, Ned was very thorough in the proposal. This site is currently zoned PDD GIP, and so there was a proposal for 2 apartment buildings on this particular site, Lot 3, with between 80 and 120 apartments tailored towards seniors. So the layouts are proposed to be a little bit different. Staff does have some comments just kind of for discussion to kick off. We suggested that the applicant might look at how the building responds and shapes in relationship to the curve of Index. Public Works did note that the intersection site distances currently do not meet the driveway access to the south direction, so that will need some further study. A revision to stormwater management, which I'm sure is quite expected, might be necessary. Of course, an erosion control stormwater management permit would be needed. And then, of course, looking at future fees. So that's kind of an overview of some of the things that staff has looked at so far, and I will.
All right, we can open up to questions, comments. I know another thing that is on here you didn't mention, but I know staff has talked with Ned about, and I agree with, is trying to figure out some of the access issues and site circulation issues between W Credit Union and Avalon and this as well. So I think this is our only chance at finally finishing up the fixing of those. So I think that'll be something that we'll look for as well from the further designs, which I know staff's talked to you about.
Yep.
Other questions, comments? I feel like we've seen this before at Terrace Point, which is good. No other concerns, it sounds like. No other feedback? All right. I guess, Durante? No? Okay.
Not at this time. Oh, thank you.
All right. I guess we don't need to take any official action, but it looks like no major concerns people have besides maybe some of the things the staff already raised, Ned. So as long as you address those, I think it'll be in pretty good shape. Unless it comes back bright pink, maybe we'll have a problem with that.
Not a chance.
All right. Thank you. Good day.
Thanks.
All right. On to H, ADR for the Dane County Emergency Management Building. And I'm not sure who's going to speak to this. So we got some people online. I think maybe some people here as well. If you're speaking to it, come on up. Are people online going to speak to it? Or?
Yes.
All right.
My name is Tom Tristano.
You need to come up to a microphone if you're going to speak. Yeah, so people online can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay. Well, as Scott comes up, my name is Tom Tristano. I'm principal in charge of Prairie Forge Group. And we have been working with Dane County over the last year and a half to renovate the property at originally 5415 King James Way, which is now 2982 Capeck Road. In the last year and a half, we have been before the Plan Commission, and we had back in November of 2020 approval for a previous submission for ADR to renovate the building to a emergency management facility for the county. Since then, the county has determined that they would need to include an elevator addition to enhance their operations and in the coming years for their storage needs that have really kind of evolved over the last 2 years with all the COVID issues going on in our world. So with that, I'd like to just, with me tonight is Jason Green with WT Group, a civil engineer, to answer any stormwater questions. I also have Rebecca Strader. She's our senior project architect, and she's going to talk a little bit because my voice is raspy because I'm recovering from COVID right now. Let's see who else. We have Scott Carlson is with Dane County. He's primary contact with Public Works, and I believe Charles Tubbs. Are you there, Charles?
Yes, sir.
Yes, he is.
Charles
in the back of the room.
Charles there, and he's the director of the Dane County Emergency Management Facility. And then we also have Rick Lang, who's the communications specialist, and we have Carrie Meyer, who's the deputy director, who is, I believe, joining us virtually. So with that, I want to just highlight, you have his, can you proceed to the next slide, Dina, with the architectural site plan? Okay, yeah, this is good. All right. As you can see here, the little highlighted yellow section is the addition of approximately 189 gross square feet of an elevator addition. There's an extended vestibule here, and that's what we're asking for approval for right now in terms of tonight's review and approval. We can go to the next slide, Dina. And then here is a blow up of the section, floor plan, and foundation plan and roof plan of the addition. And we go down to the next slide. And then here is, this is the north elevation, which is complementary to the building addition to the north and to the west. And then we'll go down to the west elevation. And you can see that the new entryway is similar to the new aluminum frames that will be all dark black anodized. We also have a small little revised canopy here with the new entry logo and the address for the entrance off of KPEC. So with that, I'm going to leave it up to any questions that you might have. Actually, you did ask us to talk a little bit about the reasons for continuing the masonry, not continuing the masonry around the entryway, and I'm going to let Rebecca talk to that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So part of the original plan, we were always moving the entry door back to this location, which is kind of to the side and back of the building. So we've always been trying to direct visitors from the parking lot to this new location of the door. And in this now opportunity we have of adding a new structure here, we would like to use that opportunity to just help draw attention to the entryway, a little bit extra height to make it a beacon. And then material-wise, the dark metal band wrapping around the whole entire building is metal. Currently, it is a turquoise green color. As part of the renovation project, it is going to be colored this dark gray. So we're taking that material and just bringing it down at the entry to really emphasize this as the door, along with the signage, the lighting, the canopy. And again, the existing, what you call brick masonry is actually CMU. It's actually concrete masonry unit wall, which is just a single block wall. There's no backup to it. So it's really lacking insulation and it's lacking a backup in a rain screen. So if we even did masonry, we, number one, after 30 years, wouldn't be able to match what's there anyway. But we'd also want to improve the function of that wall. So the metal panels are going to be a traditional rain screen system that the panel will block the rain and wind. There'll be a windbreak. There'll be a air space for drainage, and then there'll be the required insulation that will bring it up to meet the energy code, which is greatly increased from what that original wall there is. And if there's any more questions about that, and I believe the binder that we submitted does have the actual sample of the metal in it. So if anyone wants to see that, it should be there.
All right, with that, we can go to a staff report.
Just briefly, the staff did request to address the change of materials, which the applicant has done to not continue the brick facade. And that will be for the Plan Commission to consider. And staff does recommend approval with 3 pretty standard conditions. And so I'll leave it up to you.
All right, then we'll open up to questions, comments from Plan Commission. Anyone has anything? I think the explanation made sense to me on trying to make the entrance more obvious by having the kind of a little bit different feature at the entrance. So I guess I'm okay with that. Anyone else? Or a motion to approve or deny or something? I don't know. Anyone? Randy, go ahead.
Yes, I'll motion to approve architectural design review, the gym at 2186 County. Am I having another?
You're on the wrong one.
I'm on the wrong one. I apologize.
H.
Yep. Jump down further. Motion to approve architectural design review, Dane County Emergency Management at 2982 Capec Way. With the, just want to make sure. Three conditions approved, recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Zach. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, that is approved. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Next up is item I at the ADR for 2186 Highway MM. Do we have the applicant for that?
We do, and you do not have to speak.
Jeff online? All right.
Let me.
Are you handling this then? Or is Jeff? Okay. And we just have people available for questions then? Applicant available for questions?
I can handle this.
All right.
Just pop this up. Okay, so architectural design review. Oh, I'm sorry. Missed one step. Architectural design review for a gym at 2186 County Highway MM. This is an existing gym in operation under conditional use. The applicant is requesting design review for a proposed window installation and some lighting and security cameras to be installed. The conditional use, which was originally approved in 2020 for the gym facility, did require those lighting and security cameras. So what is coming before you today is simply the architectural design review for the installation of windows in the existing building. Staff does recommend approval with the following conditions. Normal condition, no other permit is approved or waived. We have added a condition that the 2020 conditional use permit remains in effect. And any change in the gym operation, including expansion of the floor area of the gym, does require a new conditional use. So it's come to staff's attention that the applicant may be interested in expanding the gym use into the entire area of the building, and that does require a conditional use. It is the applicant's responsibility to comply with all the building inspection and fire department requirements and also meet the public works requirements. And so I will.
All right, then I can open up to questions or comments from Plan Commission.
I would just comment that I think the what they're proposing would actually be a real enhancement.
I know, and there's a few photos in there. I don't know if Deanna, is that kind of the idea of what they're gonna roughly look like? That further down, I guess. I mean, there's a couple pictures of the building, but I wasn't clear if it's just kind of like a little white trim or what was going to go on.
I'm not completely clear about that. I know that the windows are being installed, and I think some of these are already existing. And what is being added are windows, especially to the back here, and maybe some upgrades into these windows in the front.
Okay. Randy?
So what we're approving this evening is really just windows at this point, and nothing really beyond that.
Right.
Because 2 years ago, I believe, when this came before us, the neighbors to the north had some questions, but there's no building expansion, anything of that nature. Okay.
We're not approving a building expansion.
Yeah, just wanted to make certain because they have reached out just out of concern for water and if there was a building expansion. But
Okay.
I imagine it'd be nicer to have more natural light in any building really, but something like this as well.
I'll move to approve ADR at 2186 County Highway MM with the 6 conditions as noted by staff.
Second.
Seconded by Emily. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, that is approved. Okay, thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And Jay, an ADR for 1 Glen Place on Bob's Drive. Do we have anyone here? I don't think we have anyone here. Are you? Okay, African, come on up. Tell us, yeah, if you can just come up and just give us a brief overview of what's going on, that'd be great.
We would like to just add a grill and fire pit space to our existing development that we've already got over there. It's a small area, 12 by 18, about the size of a parking stall. We're using a design which has already been approved to our existing location across the street for similar design.
Okay. Excellent. Staff report?
Yes, as noted, the applicant is requesting just a design review for a grill, fire pit, patio area. It is very similar to what has already been approved across the street. It's just doing some upgrades to this particular site. There are some additional information in your packet, but staff does recommend approval with 5 pretty standard conditions.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any questions, comments from Planning Commission? Or a motion that works too? Randy?
Sure. Motion to approve ADR 1 Glen Place, 2591 Bob's Drive.
With
the
5.
Five condition recommended by staff.
All right. And is that a second, Zach?
Second, yeah.
All right, seconded by Zach. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay. All right, that's approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right, moving along to our last item, Resolution R13522. Deanna, do you want to just...
I'll do an introduction. I'm sure you know more than I. Okay, so this is residential R-13522. This is a resolution adopting the 2023 through 2032 capital improvement plan. The city updates its capital improvement plan, we know as CIP, annually in accordance to city ordinances. Mayor Richardson recently presented this proposed CIP, which is available on the city's website and for the Plan Commission's review. The schedule for adoption of the CIP is also found on the city's website, and staff has just pulled out some particular items that might be of interest to the Plan Commission. Wisconsin statutes require that CIPs be referred to the Plan Commission for review for consistency of the CIP between the CIP and the city's comprehensive plan. So staff just pulled out some of the projects that might have some relevance and have some interest for Plan Commission to review. And staff does recommend that the Plan Commission approve the proposed CIP if they so choose.
I can also speak to this. I mean, it's obviously a fantastic plan done by just a very smart guy.
He should almost be running more than just the city's financials, shouldn't he? Here, take that one.
I like where your head's at. But, you know, there's a lot going on in the city. There's a lot that we'd like to do. I wish we could do more, but we're limited by budgets and by staff. And the reality is that, you know, in 2 or 3 years, there's too much in the budget. So next year's budget, you know, I think is fine as is. But there are projects that in 2 or 3 years we are going to have to get removed because there just isn't capacity to do everything in there. But that's something for the council to worry about more than anything else. But there's a lot of great things happening in the city, a lot of major roads, the police facility also. Seminole Glen is also a big thing for some people on this commission. And so happy to answer any questions you might have about it, but you know, it's something that is ongoing. The reality is that this just feeds into the operating budget, and so that's really where the rubber hits the road, because it's possible that there's things that will be in the CIP, but when we actually do the operating budget, we look at it and go, oh, whoops, we actually don't have capacity to do this. So it's always a big challenge. It's the biggest thing we do, and most important thing we do as a city council, but it's always great to have input from other bodies like this. So hopefully I can answer any questions you might have about it. Thoughts, questions, feedback? Steven?
I would just say great planning on putting it at the end of a 2.5-hour meeting. Tuck that CIP in there. I remember asking questions last year. I'm fine with it. Let's go.
Randy?
I'll motion to approve resolution R-135-22.
Second.
Sent by Steven. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say nay, and then get kicked off the commission? No, just kidding. All right, that is approved. Report from department.
Doesn't have any specific things other than I do want to mention that we are still short-staffed, but hopefully that's a temporary thing. The community development planner position is open, and it does close on like July 3rd or something like that. So hopefully we'll get that position filled. And that's all I have for this evening.
All right. No other announcements at this point. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Randy, seconded by Steven. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed to leaving? All right. We are adjourned.